Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
And hello to anyone who's listening to this as part of the Temple Beth Am podcast. Email will be going out today. Reminder, next 3 Wednesdays, so the 14th, 21st, and 28th, there'll be no class in person. Leonard will be operating a class on Zoom. The next class in person with me will be the first Wednesday in January. This is actually elegant because not engineering it this way, we're probably going to finish today right at the beginning of the genealogy, which is a kind of a long-ish gap between the very intense content we've been dealing with, the burning bush and the immediate aftermath, and then the actual beginning of the Exodus story. And if we go through that stuff more quickly today, then we'll start the genealogy. My guess is we're going to end up exactly at the beginning of that genealogy. So I think that we're halfway through the Rashi on chapter 6 of Shemot, verse 13. Let's remind ourselves. What's that?
I couldn't really remember.
6:13. I know. Interesting. Well,
on Sivan.
Well, what's the joke? Like, I'm not really I'm more of a 6:12 guy. Para Duma, not for me. But all the others, I'm willing to do. This is apropos of totally nothing. I can't believe Matt's not here to hear this wonderful joke. Do you know what a yeki is? A German Jew who's very, very punctilious about things. I saw a meme that said, "Confessions of a bad yeki. I once got to mincha late, and I missed Ashrei. But I made it by Yoshvei." I love that. I missed a word. I got there by Yoshvei, not by Ashrei. I got there by Yoshvei. Okay. The verse is chapter 6, verse 13. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe v'el Aharon vayitzavem. That's the word we've been dealing with. Hi, Sue. El bnei Yisrael v'el Paro melech Mitzrayim. B'nei Yisrael me'eretz Yisrael. Again, easy vocab words. It's interesting enough, odd syntax such that it opens up for midrashic possibilities. God spoke. The holy, blessed Rachamim one spoke. I'm just saying that for Alan because it's an interesting. It's not a contrast, but in the archetypes of Vaydaber as being harshness and Adonai as being sweetness, this is one of many, many times, obviously, Vayiver Adonai Moshe more, we're going to have it, but this is one of the first times that the Holy Blessed One spoke, El Moshe v'Aaron, to Moses and Aaron, Vayitzavem, God commanded them, right, so it's a direct object, commanded them, here's the weird part, to, regarding, about, is it El that really should mean Al, with respect to, and whatever that preposition El means here, God also did the same with respect to, about Pharaoh. Melech Mitzrayim, is there a hidden notion that God commanded them to go to, right? Do we honor the preposition to and backfill what should be in between? Or do we assume that this preposition is fluid and it really means al with respect to, right? We dealt with that a little bit. And how would it be a noun?
Rabbi, I can't hear the other people. Is there another mic?
So the God of the children of Israel and the God of Pharaoh commanded them to bring Israel out of the land of Egypt. Folks, when you finally buy the full commentary on the book of Exodus by Joel Elkins, this will be one of the most interesting insights he ever made. I love that. It's clearly not what the verse means, but it works. I love it. Right? That the God of and the God who's about to rule over Pharaoh made this command. Terrific.
Rabbi, we can't hear anybody in the class.
Oh, that's right. Well, there's no anybody yet, but Joel said, meaning Joel said one thing he forgot to say on the microphone, but it's worth repeating. So Joel, will you say it again on the microphone?
Can you? El could be a noun meaning the God of Bnei Israel and the God of Pharaoh commanded them.
So he's saying that the subject, the Yud in Vayetzavim, which is the subject of and he commanded them, is El B'nai Yisrael v'El Paro Melech Mitzrayim is the subject. The God of the children of Israel and the God who's about to show God's godness over Pharaoh commanded them, the them is Moses and Aaron, sort of, to make sure that the Israelites got out of Egypt. Lovely. Right, really, really interesting rendering of it. Okay.
So, Rabbi,
Yeah.
if that's what he just said, at the end of the Torah reading this week that I'm doing for Rabbi Schatz and company, the last three words are El Elohei Yisrael. It's verse 20, where Jacob and Esau are going back home, and he calls the place El Elohei Yisrael. So, nice
Rick,
coincidence.
you're not doing that Torah reading for Rabbi Schatz. You're doing it for God and the Jewish people and for all of us. It's not a private.
Just for
Torah
Rebecca.
Yeah. Wonderful. I mean, listen, let's linger for a second. Even if it's pretty clear that the pshat that Joel suggests is not pshat, that's fine, because Rashi all the time will say, this is the pshat, but I prefer this midrashic reading, so let's run with it. It's really so fascinating that the two Hebrew letters, Aleph Lamed, means something as pedestrian as a preposition that means two, and borrowed from ancient other languages, that El means God. So El means the biggest thing that we could say in Hebrew and the smallest connecting word. So that playfulness is almost mandatory, given the fact that it's the exact same two letters with the same vowels. Barry, let's get Barry Mike.
I'd like to return to the comment I made last week that this is the beginning of the Aaron story. And so what's important here is that it's not only Moshe, but also Aaron to the Bnei Israel and Aaron to Paro.
Good, right.
It begins the Aaron story.
Good. And the Rashi, the second Rashi we're going to read today is on the same topic, Barry. So we'll bring back that comment when we read that Rashi. Okay. We read, I believe, the first Rashi on...
We're on Sivam.
Right. Sivam Alav. Right. We read the first two Rashis on the first one that said that about since Moshe said he was slow of speech, God connected Seiref, Aaron, to him in line with what Aaron is saying, what Barry is saying, that we're introducing Aaron here. And then we heard Rashi's initial understanding of what Vayetzavim El Bnei Yisrael means. And he reads it, he says the preposition is wrong, right? It's really al. God commanded them regarding. And since we don't have the content of that command, Rashi understands it to mean that what did God command them? Commanded them to be nice. That they are kotzer ruach, their shortness of spirit. They're about to go through an ordeal. This was a pep talk, by God to Moshe and Aaron, saying, no matter what happens next, just be gentle with the Israelites. Okay, and then Rashi continues that for the next section. So El Paro Melech Mitzrayim. Alan, do you want to read?
Sure. So let me just see exactly where we are, which I always have trouble doing. Yeah, this book is not yes.
It's the third comment of Rashi on verse 13.
Okay.
And the first Hebrew word is tzivam.
Okay. El Paro Melech Mitzrayim Tzivam Alav Lachalok Lo Kavod B'Divrehem Zehu Midrasha.
Okay, so first translate Tzivam Alav Lachalok Lo Kavod B'Divrehem, or try to translate.
Okay. That it was commanded upon them.
He, because it's gendered here,
Yes.
He commanded them.
He commanded them lechalok lo chalek to.
Wait, first do the alav.
Divam alav. That
So what?
he commanded alav upon them or concerning them,
No, concerning him, right?
concerning him,
So
alav, yes.
the first thing Rashi does is, like the previous command, turns the El Aleph Lamed into an Al Ayin Lamed, right? He says, Letterman came and changed the Aleph to an Ayin. So this is not sending a command to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, but God commanded Aaron and Moshe both regarding the Israelites
Yes.
and regarding Pharaoh.
Regarding, yes.
And what's the substance of it?
Lachalok lo kavod, to be berachamim, to deal with them gently.
You have Barachamim.
B'divreihem.
B'divreihem.
Excuse me, kavod b'divreihem. Excuse me. It says lachalok, to deal with him with honor in their words.
Right. The phrase lachlok kavod cannot be translated literally. If you translate it, it means to divide honor. It really means to bestow honor. And it's still in modern Hebrew, certainly Jewy Hebrew, idiomatic expression. If you're being like in yeshivish, like if you're going to talk about, doing something, generous towards one of your teacher or your chavruta, it's being cholek kavod. You can't translate it, but it means to be nice. What's that? Okay, good, right? To share the honor, to share the spotlight. So what does it mean here? So what does it mean that God is commanding Moses and Aaron that b'divreihem, when they use their words to Pharaoh, they are supposed to be choleking him kavod? Meaning what? Meaning what and why?
Honoring him.
Honoring Pharaoh, right? Meaning the same general respect, Moses and Aaron, that I want you to use regarding the Israelites because they are powerless. I'm now Rashiing Rashi. I want you to bring the same respect to Pharaoh because he's powerful, right? Don't lord over the powerless Israelites, and don't try to pretend to lord, pun intended, over Pharaoh, at least in the initial encounter, right? You're not, not by night, not by power, but with my spirit, right? Eventually, God is going to show God's power, but I want you to walk into Pharaoh's palace humbly. Right? What's this like? Forget about or jump over the mechanism of the commentary. What's the sermonette here? Like, what is the significance of rereading the scene such that God sends Moses and Aaron back to Pharaoh, not tail between their legs, but humbly, giving him the kavod, not them? Rosemary, is your hand up? Microphone to Rosemary.
I think that there are two things here. One is that when you give importance to somebody or a mission, that person can take that mission and feel very important, and then does the thing which is not kosher. And so that makes them humble, both of them. They are chosen, but it doesn't mean they can do everything. And the other one, Pharaoh is the most powerful one. You enter, he has all his army, everybody around. You enter, he says, let me go. And then he can just call somebody and kill you. But if you enter with respect, then he may listen to you.
Right. Listen, even to this day, it's hard for me just as a citizen, as a resident, to figure out, do I bring more or less of myself initially in a negotiation? Could be the negotiation on like negotiating a price for a used car or a favor I'm asking someone. Do you start with full force and then pull back to show who's in charge? Or do you start with humility and hope that humility will gain you something, right? And I don't always get it right, but I think that's what Rashi's playing with here. Sue? Mike?
We have
Yeah.
we have a couple examples, like when Yaakov goes to Esav, and
This week's Parsha.
is that what it is?
Yeah, Vayishma.
And I mean, he butters him up really good and really humbly, and he kind of crawls to him and falls upon him and kisses him and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's this kind of, I think it's a fine strategy to go in with deference. It's really distinctly different from how like God sends Jonah into Nineveh, all full of fire and brimstone. So it's not like always like this, but certainly in this story we have precedence for buttering him up and going in soft.
Good. And what's interesting is that this is entirely absent in the Pshat. Right? Rashi is really conjuring this through the Midrash. So it's not like, oh, right, that would make sense in that scene. Had we not read this Midrash, we would not have assumed at all that God sent them in humbly. We would have said God sent them in with God on their back because they're about to do great signs and wonders. One second, Tova. One of my biggest pet peeves in the way people misuse English words in this generation, alongside how the word literally has become the opposite of literally, right? Like that great Gary Gulman line, he says, he's doing a routine, he goes, literally, and by literally, I mean my generation's use of the word literally, my generation's word for literally, right? Because now this generation literally means its own antonym. Yeah. How many times have you seen the last week someone that you know who was invited to some great event or given some great honor, and the first thing it says, I'm so humbled? They actually mean the opposite of that. And it's okay. It's okay to say that in this moment, I'm not humbled. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling grand. I've got I was invited to the White House dinner and you were not, right? Every colleague of mine who says, I'm so humbled to be invited to the White House for Hanukkah is not humbled in that moment, and that's okay. They're actually feeling like they're doing something of significance, and it's okay to say that. And I have a pet peeve with how being humbled is used to, like that humble brag. I think in some ways, Rashi is saying here that it could have been that Moshe and Aaron would have gone into Pharaoh's presence with a humble brag, saying, oh, we're so humbled to be here, but actually presented themselves haughty. And Rashi saying, God's saying, no, this moment does not call for haughtiness, which is interesting because later on it absolutely will, because they're going to use the power of God to humble Pharaoh. But not yet, building up. Tova. Mike?
I don't know if Rashi was going there, but I was thinking of the first encounters of Moshe. He both aggrandizes himself, but he also aggrandizes God. And you could almost add on to this that God is not just saying, back off a little bit yourself, Moshe, but I don't need that. If power needs to be shown, I'll show power, but you don't need to come in this way.
Wonderful. Really wonderful, Tova. Rick, I see your hand.
You had a story, I don't know if it was Freud or somebody, and he was saying no, 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 and the punchline is one no would have been enough. Could you retell that one?
It's an encounter between, I always forget if it's Stephen S. Wise or Isaac Mayer Wise. There were two renowned Reform rabbis whose last name was Wise in the late 19th, early 20th century. And there was a list that had come out about, this generation's greatest living Jews. And Freud said to Wise, whichever Wise it was, Dr. Wise, do you expect your name to be on that list? And Dr. Wise said, oh, me? No. And Freud said, one no would have been sufficient. Right? Yes, exactly right. If my father's listening, because sometimes he listens to this podcast, he'll be smiling because he loves telling that story. Okay, so, I see a comment. Let me just see what it is. Louder would be nice. Okay, yes, we would try to be louder and humbler. Yeah, that'll be very loud. Okay, keep going, Alan.
Upshuto, sivam al devar.
So what does the word upshuto mean?
The real meaning.
Right, so what's Rashi revealing with that one word about all the conversation we just had?
It's just midrash.
Right, it's sweet but frivolous. We can't hear Alan, so he needs a microphone. Right? Yeah, what's that?
Yeah. Well, to repeat, we're dealing this is all the pshuto, this is but the real meaning, everything else beforehand was sweet midrash. And that's what Rashi expressly says, ze midrasho, and then he says, but upshuto, but the real meaning, the pshat, is Tzivam al Davar Yisrael va'al shlichuto el paro.
Look what he does there. Before we even look at the content, Rashi is giving this extended double commentary on the word el. And the first commentary on el, he said means al, without saying it. And now he's in his second commentary on this word, he's playing around with el al, and he's not flying to Israel. So I just think there's something, I just love his very intentional use of prepositions in commenting on what this preposition might mean. So now translate.
All right, and the real meaning is that God commanded about
commanded them, tzivam.
Commanded them about Israel and about God's mission to Pharaoh.
Yeah, the shlichuto is probably not God's mission. Who's the O?
Here, well, if it's his, it would be Moshe's, but that would be strange because it's Moshe and Aaron that are actually going to do this mission together.
Good point. Right. So since it's tzivam, you might have expected Rashi to say shlichutam, but I have a hard time understanding. Maybe that was a bad idea. Sorry, buddy. Harrington, stop that. He'll settle down. Barry has a solution. Okay, give Barry the mic.
I'm looking at my translation here. The first L is Moshe and Aaron to Bnei Israel. The second L is God's mission to Pharaoh. So
you're talking about the L's in the verse, or you're talking about the Rashi?
There are two L. This is an interpretation of Rashi's interpretation. That the one L is Moshe and Aaron to Bnei Israel. The other L is God's mission to Pharaoh.
Yeah, that's the way. That's the way Alan tried to read it too. I'm just trying to figure out if I think Rashi would have referenced God's mission to Pharaoh in that way, because it's not really that God is going to Pharaoh. God is going to Pharaoh through Moshe and Aaron, but we clearly know the intent there. So let's kind of leave that as a maybe. Keep going, Alan.
Udvar hatzivui bahu befarash beparsha shniya lachar seder hayachas.
Good. So translate that part.
Okay, and Dvar hatzivui bahu, and this, and these things that were commanded. What are they?
Right. And so Rashi is saying, so if it's the case that the pshat is that God commanded them regarding what they're about to do in Egypt, and you might be asking, well, then what's the content of the command? Because some of the super commentaries on Rashi say that Rashi's challenge on this verse is normally the phrase vayetzavim, God commanded them, is followed by the content of the command, and we don't have any content here. So if, reader, you're asking, so mahu, what is the matter, the dvar, the word, the content of the command? Mefurash.
This is explained in the Parsha Shniya, in the second part of this parsha.
Right.
What's going on here?
He's using the word shniya here to mean next. Right. The upcoming part 2.
Part 2 of what's contained in here. La'acher seder hayachas. That's so you have to the second one that's following here.
That comes after. What does it come after? Seder hayachas.
Seder hayachas, the order of the order of the connection. That doesn't.
What does yachas mean?
Oh,
relationship, right? Or genealogy. Right?
Oh.
So if you just peek ahead to the verse we're about to read, the verse 14, which begins the second aliyah of Parshat Shemot, Ela Rashi Beit Avotam Bnei Ruvain Bechor. Right? We're about to get a genealogy. Rashi refers to the several, many verse genealogy to come as Seder Hayachas, the order of the relationships that we're about to learn. Okay? So to bring that together. If you're wondering, folks, why the word sivam is used but not the content, it will come. But it will come after the upcoming genealogy. What's the next problem then that Rashi has to answer? So to predict what Alan's about to read. Why? Why interrupt what we are right now with Seder Hayachas? Don't we want to find out the content of the genealogy? Now Rashi answers that, and that will come back to what Barry said at the beginning of the class.
Yeah. Ella mitoch shehizkir Moshe v'Aharon hifsik ha'inyan va'ela Rashi Beth Avotam.
And you can put quotes around Ela Rashi Beit Avatam because it's the first words of the next verse.
Va'ela Rashi Beit Avotam lilamdenu. Boy, this print is small.
Let's get Alan a different book.
Yeah, I need a different book.
Let's all pitch in. Lamdenu Heach.
Heach noldu Moshe v'Aharon uvemi nit yachamu.
Nit yachasu.
Nit.
Okay, so translate that. So again, he doesn't give us the question, but Leonard provided the question. So why then are we about to pause before the cliffhanger is resolved?
Yeah.
Mitoch shehizkir.
Yeah, in order to remind Moshe and Aaron.
Let me replace in order with since or because, and the shehizkir is mention, not remind here. Even though in modern Hebrew it can be to mention. To make someone remember is to remind them, but by mentioning something, you're also making someone remember, because lahazkir grammatically is the causative, the he feel of zachar. So you can do that by mentioning someone, by reminding something. Is he gonna?
To remind them of the mission, that's.
No, to mention.
To mention, excuse me.
Mitoch shehizkir Moshe v'Aaron. Since this verse mentioned Moses and Aaron, and to go back to what Barry was saying before, and brought Aaron back into the scene when Aaron had not been there before, since we've got these two guys mentioned again, hifsik ha'inyan.
That we have a pause in the matter, in this matter, in this first matter, and this is the quote. Where does the quote begin?
Next verse, Ela Rashi Beit Avatam. These are the heads of the houses of their ancestors. Go ahead.
Okay. Lilamdenu, to teach us. Lilamdenu, to teach us.
He'ach noldu. What does that mean?
He'ach. I'm trying to figure out what he'ach means. Noldu is born. Noldu is
right.
Born.
He'ach is something like how or in what way.
Oh, in what way Moshe and Aaron fit in here, where they came from, Uvami, and who, Nidya, and how they are connected together with this.
Right. So it's kind of it's not really long-winded because he says very tersely, but it takes a lot of English to get it out. That Rashi is saying, if you reader are A, wondering where's the content of the tzivui, and B, or if you're wondering where the content of the tzivui is, I'm going to answer on behalf of the Torah and say that Moshe and Aaron are mentioned here, brothers. We've never really learned how they're connected to the very people that they're about to be asked to bring out. We know that Moshe came from a Beit Levi, right? Remember that story from the beginning of Shemot? And so this is Rashi's way of justifying a very odd, long break in the middle of a very intense story, right? Now we can reject Rashi's explanation, but that's the content of Rashi's explanation. Barry, do you say something?
No, I just,
Mike.
It just makes sense. Why interrupt the whole story with the genealogy? Because you got to place these two people.
Right. So you're accepting Rashi's answer. Good. Rashi, we're very happy to know that. Anyone else want to comment or question this last piece of Rashi? Leonard, give Leonard a microphone, please. And Rebecca, thank you for bringing in that's very helpful.
but this could have been, Rashi is saying this is here because we're talking about Moses and Aaron, but this isn't the only place we're talking about Moses and Aaron. So it still doesn't answer the question, why here and not, last chapter.
Right. Right. So there's a difference between the type of an answer that is fully comprehensive and says why here and nowhere else, and an answer which is 50% effective. I don't know why nowhere else, but I do know why here, right? So Rashi is trying to just get us to the latter. You're right. It could have been mentioned. When was the last time Aaron came in? Yeah, right. So correct. Is that at the end of Shemot? Right. So if you look back at 6:20.
But Rabbi, isn't this the first time that they're mentioned as leaders? Not that they're mentioned, but that they're mentioned as leaders specifically.
Right. So that's a possible answer to Leonard's question. But Leonard's question on the Rashi is a good question. It's not the first time that Aaron's brought into the scene. Vayivku'u et Moshe v'et Aharon nitzavim lakratam. When the Israelites came back, realizing that their work had been doubled by the initial attempt by Moshe and Aaron to intervene, we could have paused there. We could have paused even before that when Moshe and Aaron go there the first time. 5 what? 5:20.
Rabbi.
Hold on. I can't do two things at once. Right. So if you go to 4:27, Vayomer Adonai al Aharon, God said to Aaron, Lech likrat Moshe, go greet Moshe Hamidbara in the desert. Vayelech, and he went. Vayivkashehu Bahar Elohim Vayishak lo. He met him in the house in the mountain of God, and they kissed. Genealogy. It's a perfect place for it. Right?
But that's not a command.
It's not a command.
And he's talking to Aaron to go meet.
Yeah. But what Leonard's question stands, this section, Rashi is justifying its presence so that we understand Moshe and Aaron's relationship to the people they're about to bring out. It could also have been inserted earlier. What's the non-Talmudic Rashi Orthodox answer to this conundrum? Different sources. This is how the editors wove it together, right? So, I mean, it's for the 100th time and more. It's unbelievable we have an intact text in general, whether the source is from the Holy One at Mount Sinai or from human authors. So the attempts to kind of conjure the stitching together lead to sometimes very convincing and sometimes less convincing explanations. This got in here now. Rashi's trying to give us a why. I see Rick's hand.
Yeah, hi. I was just going to say, I looked back to see when they were introduced. First of all, Miriam is mentioned as the sister, but she doesn't get a name credit. And then Aaron comes up. Actually, God mentions him first, unless I'm wrong, but chapter 4, verse 14. When he says to Moses, isn't Aaron your brother? I know he can speak well.
Right. He's going to be to you like a god.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's the first Aaron. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Right. And that verse, he's Aaron the Levi. Okay. So what I want to do now, because we finished the Rashi before the genealogy, there were a couple other commentaries that I wanted to show you that may or may not take the rest of the time. If not, then we'll start the genealogy. But let me just pull them up. Okay. Pull them up on all the screens. Okay. People on Zoom, you can see that, and people in the room, you can see it?
Yes.
Barely? Okay, so I'll have to read it out loud. Okay, so this is Ibn Ezra on this verse. Remember, Ibn Ezra produces content, but mostly he thinks of himself as a grammarian, right? And as being very focused on the precise meaning of each word, okay? On the phrase vayitzavim. Paddington, come here. Basically, Ibn Ezra inserts a verb to preserve the L as a two. Remember, we were discussing before, do we keep the verb? Do we keep the preposition and then insert something beforehand, or do we say the preposition is really fluid? So on the word vayetzavem, Ibn Ezra adds the word lalechet. God commanded them to go. Now the rest of the sentence makes sense. To go, El B'nai Yisrael, to go to the children of Israel, and to go to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. For some reason, I don't understand why Ibn Ezra is not buying the Joel Elkin's interpretation of this verse. I think had he known about it, he might have been convinced. The Rabbi Yeshua, he references some Joshua. I do not know who Rabbi Joshua is to Ibn Ezra. Amar, he said, Kitam, the reason for Vayetzavem, the word, and he commanded them, Shalo yichasu al Yisrael, that they shall not get angry on Israel, Im lo yishma'u alehem, if they don't listen to the first time, ve'ein sorach, and there's no need for that. This is Ibn Ezra basically debunking Rashi, right? But quoting Rabbi Yeshua. So the son Rabbi Yeshua has said, this is not El, it's Al, it's about the children of Israel, he's commanding them not to be angry or harsh with the Israelites, and that's what it means. And Ibn Ezra says that's not what it means. But it's interesting that he, like in a kind of Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai way, he brings up the interpretation that he wants to reject. Okay, that's Ibn Ezra. Yes, Leonard?
I think the reason that he rejected the Joe Elkins hypothesis
Yes.
is because he was a grammarian. El meaning God has a tzere, El meaning two has a segol.
Oh. El meaning God is a segol? Right. The reason why...
No, El meaning God is at Sarah.
Right, that's what he's saying. The reason why, but one of the reasons why the El is at Seireh here is, a segol in our verse, is because it's hyphenated to the next word, which means it's become an unaccented closed syllable. If it were standing by itself, I think El too would also have its Seireh, wouldn't it? That on its own, Aleph Lamed meaning two is a segol? I stand corrected. So Joel, sorry. Your interpretation got taken down by the absence of a single dot and a vowel. Okay.
Which is never there.
Which is
Not really there.
right. Okay, so that's Ibn Ezra. Let's look at Sforno, Italian commentary, 16th century. Vayetzavem goes in an entirely different direction, and I wish Barry were here because he's. This is going to connect to what Barry had said before or associate with it. Mina otam l'sarim. Basically, Sforno is taking the verb vayetzavem on its own and disconnecting it from the preposition that follows. He commanded them, meaning appointed them. He appointed them as ministers. He gave them an uptick in rank, right? He brought Moses and Aaron to a higher level. Kamo, like we have in Numbers 27-23, vayismoch et yadav alav vayetzavehu, when Moshe is transferring the authority from himself to Joshua, he places his hands upon him. By the way, that's one of the sources for why rabbinic ordination is called smicha, because a thing that happened when Moshe transferred his chief rabbi position, anachronistic term, to Joshua, he was told to place his hands upon him. So smicha literally means a placement of hands. Vayetzavehu, and commanded him. Clearly in that verse, we don't assume that Moses is giving Joshua a command. He's charging him, right? Charging him meaning appointing him to a new level. L'nagid v'zulatam. He's pointing him over to have supreme authority, and there are other examples like that. So Sforno says, you don't need Rashi turning El into an Al. You don't need Ibn Ezra inserting a lalechet. Take Vayetzavem as meaning that God just reinvested them with greater authority. Okay? And then finally, this is Chizkuni. Too bad Larry is not joining us on Zoom because Larry loves the Chizkuni. El Moshe, the second one. See where my cursor is. Davar Acher, another reading. Vayetzavem el b'nei Yisrael. So again, our phrase, God commanded them regarding the children of Israel, lidaber alehem, to speak to them, kol ma shekatuv l'mala, Basically, the missing word is not lalechet, but ledaber, according to Chizkuni. God commanded them and said to them all of the stuff, or God told Moses and Aaron to say all the stuff that we've been discussing. Mitchilat sidra, from the beginning of the parsha, ad lachem morasha ani Adonai, until the words we're going to get to far in the future, which you can see are, I forgot where that, in verse 8, which is going to come after all of the genealogy. V'acharechen she'ilchu el paro. So this is similar to what Barry was saying. The two L's mean different things. God commanded Moses and Aaron to speak to the children of Israel. That's the first L. And then after that they should go to Pharaoh, vayidabru elav mishmo, and they should speak to Pharaoh in God's name. Lohotzia b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. So instead of reading it as two twos, meaning the same thing, one two meant to speak to, the second two meant to go to. All these medieval rabbis are trying to resolve the same thing that we could resolve rather easily by saying that the word siva can mean several different things, that the difference between an El and an Al is not as significant as we think, and no one resolution is necessarily better than the others. Barry's got something to say.
There can be no redundancy in the Torah. There can be no unnecessary words.
Right. That is the impetus for all of these conversations, correct? If we're reading the text as if every word and every letter, every word is there for a reason, that leads to these wonderful and sometimes fantastical interpretations. Okay. Anything else in this section before we get to the genealogy? The genealogy we're going to read through. It's going to be, it's going to be drier, but still worth exploring. And Rashi's not entirely quiet on it. Okay. I should keep track of who I call on to read, because I don't remember who I have called on and who's hasn't spoken today. Let me see if anyone on Zoom. Renee, do you want to read verse 14?
Ele, from Ele?
Yes.
Ele Rashi Beit Abutam, Bnei Reuven, Bechor Yisrael, Chanoch Ufalu, Hatzaron Vekarmei, Ele Mishpachot Reuven.
Good. Okay, try to translate.
So these are the heads of their fathers' houses. The sons of Reuven, the firstborn of Israel, Chanoch and Palu.
Mm-hmm. Palu, but because it's beged kefet and it's no longer the beginning of the word, it turns to falu. Yeah.
Chezron and
Chezron.
Du's relative.
In this class.
Du's relative and Carmi.
Carmi turned into Charmi because of beged kefet, right? Elah?
And these are the families of Reuven.
By the way, do you / Ofer know that this is where this comes from? That Chezron was the son of Reuven?
No. There you go.
There you go.
You learned something new every day.
You do indeed.
The Chezronim, Yiches, were connected to Reuven. Okay, and we're sitting with them.
Imagine that. We all got somebody. You're Rashi, you're Reuven.
Okay. Right. So we got the basic sense of the word. These are the heads of the ancestral houses of literally it's a double smichut, the heads of the house of their fathers. And then we start with the first one. The children of Reuven, who was the firstborn of Israel, firstborn of Jacob, are 4 people: Chanoch, Palu, Chezron, Carmi. These are the families of Reuven. And we're going to see this you see some of this redundancy every time you have a genealogy where it's like the category is listed, the names are listed, and the category is closed by saying these are even though we know that these are we just read through that. Any comments or questions on this verse, aside from the wonderful What? That's just.
Somebody tell everyone online to stay tuned. Me. Stay tuned.
Sorry, everyone. Okay. Anything we want to say on this verse, Joel?
Just what is the subject or whatever of avotam? Avot shel who? Shel me.
Yeah.
Because it's not Moshe and Aaron's father.
So the question Joel is asking is, if we're really precise about every possessive pronoun here, Rashi are heads of, Beit is the house of, Avotam, which doesn't mean literally their fathers. It can mean their ancestors, right? So it's still the question you're asking is it Moshe and Aaron? Is it generically the heads of the house of Israel's fathers, ancestors? I'm not 100% sure. I think it could be either.
Paternal households.
Right, but I'm not sure who directly the is referring to. It could be Moshe and Aaron. Right. Or it could be that, just the children of Israel. Okay. Sue? You say something? Oh, you yawned. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's possible. It's possible to yawn. Okay. So, Renee, will you read the Rashi?
אלה ראשי בית אבותם מתוך שחוזקק ליחס שבטו של לוי עד משה ואהרון. בשביל משה ואהרון התחיל ליחסם דרך תולדותם מראובן.
Okay, so translate that so far. And in order to make sense of what Rashi's saying here, keep in mind the last thing that Rashi said on the previous verse, was that the whole reason for this genealogy is to tell you how Moshe and Aaron are related to the people whom they're about to free, okay?
So these are the heads of their fathers' houses. Since the genealogy of the tribe of Levi.
Right, since the huskak means needed to, and the unmentioned subject is kind of the text or God. Since the text or God had to or felt the need to, liaches, to connect the tribe of Levi from whom Moshe and Aaron are descended to all these other people,
until Moshe and Aaron.
Right.
Because of Moshe and Aaron.
Right. Since, reader, the reason, Rashi's argument for why we're in this whole section is to connect Moshe and Aaron to these folks and to eventually get to Levi, Hitchil.
So it started out the genealogy in the order of their birth from Reuven on.
Right. So Rashi's saying, you reader might be wondering if I'm standing by my previous explanation that the reason for this genealogy is to connect Moshe and Aaron, why didn't the Torah begin with Moshe and Aaron or with Levi? And Rashi's basically saying, don't you remember Breshit? Don't you remember all the problems we had in upending order? I'm going to start with Reuven, and eventually down the track, you'll see in the genealogy of the sons and the grandsons of the 12 tribes of Israel, you'll get to Moshe and Aaron. We're not going to start there. We're going to get there. That's Rashi it's like once you read a section meaning a certain thing, then you have to resolve all other questions that come up based on that reading. Rebecca?
Having done genealogy research, I would think you'd want to start with the earliest information that you do have. So why not start with Yaakov? Why not start with Avraham? Why start with Reuben? So it seems kind kind of a chopped off place to start.
Right. The Torah is beginning the genealogy here. I'm muted.
Mhm.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Rachel's saying she can't hear me. Can you hear me? Rachel? Barbara, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
might be
I
something,
hear you
might be something
fine.
wrong with Rachel's computer. Someone can write back to Rachel that on the chat that I can't be heard, that you all can hear me.
The cold went to her ears, maybe.
So the Torah is beginning this genealogy essentially with those that came down into Egypt. And Rebecca's thought is, if you're going to do the genealogy, go back a couple of generations. Yeah, Barry.
Because essentially we're talking B'nai Israel. B'nai Israel's after.
Right. Well, that just begs the question: why is the genealogy of B'nai Israel? It could have been the genealogy of B'nai Avraham. But right, in the text, it's Lahotzi et B'nai Israel, the children of Israel from Egypt. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Let's see if we can get close to finishing this Rashi. We may not be able to.
Uvefisikita Rabbatai Ra'iti.
Does everybody not have? Does some people not have this next section? There's a section coming up that was not in the first printing. Let me see if it's in the Torah Chaim. Oh, it's in here. Okay, yeah. All right.
Lefi Shekin Taram Yaakov Avinu Lishlosha Shvetim Halalu B'Sha'at Moto. Chazar Haktov V'Hayachas Kan Levadam.
Lomar.
Wait, Levadam. Shimon. Oh, no, Levadam. Lomar Shechashvuim Cham.
Okay.
Hem.
Shechashuvim hem. Okay. So Uvifsikta Gdola, there's a Midrashic collection called the Psikta Gdola. You may have heard of Psikta Rabati. This is called Psikta Gdola. Ra'iti, I saw.
Different explanations of why the tribes of Reuven and Shimon are mentioned here.
Wait, hold on. Let's just do the words. Lefi shekintram Yaakov Avinu lishlosha shvatim halalu. Lekanter means to critique or
complain.
Excuse me?
Complain.
Yeah, it really means to call out, to reprove. Because Yaakov Avinu, our ancestor, reproved these 3 tribes on his deathbed, B'Sha'at Moto, when he was dying. So if we remember Parshat Vayechi, those really hard to understand verses that in some ways presage the Parshat V'Zot Bracha, where Jacob is dying and he gives these blessings to the children of Israel. Not all the blessings seem like blessings. In particular, when he blesses, I think it's Reuven, Levi, and Shimon, he's got harsh words. Levi and Shimon because of what happened at Shechem, and Reuven because of a potential, stealing of his bed, right? So since the last we've heard about Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are their father cursing them, right? Blessing them, but with harsh words. This is another explanation of why start here and not start with Moshe and Aaron. Keep going. Chazar HaKatuv.
So scripture repeated and set out their genealogy. To say that anyway, they are less important, less distinguished.
No, distinguished. Shehem Lomar.
Oh, that they're still, nonetheless,
right.
That they're still distinguished.
So you might be wondering what's the status of these sons and these tribes after the blessed curse that Yaakov gives. Rashi says that he read in this midrash that we actually highlight these 3 tribes to let you know that there was no reduction in their status, even though Jacob gave them a harsher blessing. Tova, last comment of the day.
It also makes sense because he's presented this as explaining who Aaron and Moshe are, and yet they are from one of these tribes. So to just include, or to start with Levi, and then sort of, this way he takes the entire group that received the harsh blessing and explains why they're being redeemed, if you sense, here. And in doing that, also elevating the heritage of Moshe and Aaron,
Right.
so that you're not presenting the negative side of their heritage.
Right. Wonderful. And also remember that if you start with Ruvain, if you're starting with Ruvain because you got to start at the beginning, but your goal is to get to Levi, to Moshe and Aaron, you get Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, and then you say, I'm done. I don't need to go into Zvulun's heritage here. I've redone the genealogy. I've gotten to Moshe and Aaron. Okay, now I continue with the story. Leonard actually has the last comment of the day.
It doesn't stop with Aaron. It goes for 2 more generations to tell you who the next leaders are.
Right, but it stops with Levi. We don't go through the rest of the tribes.
Right. It goes. It's specifically to get you to the following leaders.
Right. Right. Okay, let's hold it there. Okay. Joel Elkins, who disagrees with Ibn Ezra, is actually gonna.
In Roots 2, where Alex Haley was trying to go back and find where Kunta Kinte was, they found this guy that memorized the whole history, and he started like way back. And they said, wait, just get to Kunta Kinte. No, he has to do it in order. He has to start from the beginning, and then he gets to Kunta Kinte. And he couldn't start from the middle. And once he got to Kunta Kinte, then.
Very good. I don't remember that, but now I will never forget it.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.